And I spend so much time in solitude,
Mhm.
really learning just about myself. And it's like I'm becoming my own best friend.
Hi all, it's Zoe here. Thanks for hanging out with me again today and joining the Surviving with Zoe podcast, a conversation where amazing inspirational survivors from all walks of life share their personal stories and expert advocates educate you, our audience, in order to break stigmas and taboos regarding mental health and trauma, kind of like free therapy and permission to always give yourself grace and compassion as we are ultimately all surviving every day. Before we dive in, we would like to add a trigger warning for anyone that is vulnerable to particular issues. Please pause if needed and check out our timestamps in our description if you need to skip ahead. Lastly, if you could please hit the subscribe button below and follow us on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and TikTok. We would really appreciate it since we are a new podcast and need all the love we can get. And of course, we want to amplify our guests' voices. Today's guest on Surviving with Zoe is Samantha DeMarco, an incredible certified life coach and mental health advocate. Samantha has lived through immense trauma, including sexual and narcissistic abuse, the recent loss of her mother, religious trauma, navigating divorce, and being diagnosed with ADHD later in life. But through it all, she has learned how to transform pain into power. Samantha is deeply committed to helping others feel less alone in their healing journey, whether she's sharing her story, dancing at a 90s concert, or embracing solitude with strength. She reminds us that resilience can be soft, joyful, and deeply human. Welcome to Surviving with Zoe, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. Samantha, you are a certified life coach and mental health advocate who has bravely endured a lot in your life. Can you tell us, in your own words, from the beginning, your story?
Sure. So, kind of to start off with, you already mentioned that I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was 38 years old. So that means that I spent 38 years struggling with this disability and feeling like there was something wrong with me on
Mhm.
top of everything else that I was going through. So
Right.
people just thought that I was an anxious child or that I was too emotional or super
Mhm.
dramatic, but really I was emotionally dysregulated because my
Yeah.
brain was wired so differently. So, on top
Yeah.
of all of the things that I'm going to share today, we can just also keep that in the back of our minds that that's a whole nother kind of
Right.
traumatic experience to really be struggling with a disability and for
Yeah.
people to not recognize it and just expect you to try harder when that's not what you needed.
Right.
And I think that was something that was especially difficult for me as a younger child. When I started going to school, I had a lot of trouble leaving my mom, and I didn't like being in
Mm.
the school environment. I had trouble staying in class. I always wanted to get up, go to the
Mhm.
restroom, call my mom. My mom was my safe space when I was younger through adulthood. And one of the reasons I think for that is because my dad has a lot of narcissistic tendencies. It's hard to diagnose a narcissist because they don't really ever go to get help. But
Yeah.
I'll just say that I grew up with a dad who had a lot of narcissistic tendencies, and I was in trouble often, put in the
Mhm.
corner for timeout to spend time alone. And it wasn't necessarily that I did things that were wrong, it was just I did things that upset him, that
Mhm.
he didn't like,
Mhm.
or that maybe annoyed him. Like, I remember I used to take things he would say very literally. So I remember there being a time that we were sitting outside playing a board game, and he made a joke saying that the boogeyman was going to come around the corner. And I got really scared thinking that, like, oh, there's this monster that's going to
Right.
come and get me. And I started crying, and he just got so angry, like, because I wanted to go and play the game inside so that we were safe. And he was just like, oh, you're so dramatic. You always have to, like, make such a big deal. You can't take a joke. I'm like 5, 6 years old or
Right.
something like that. So it's like little things like that where most of my childhood, up until I was about 10 years old when my parents separated and got divorced,
Mm-hmm.
lived with a dad who was just constantly critical of me. And when I would go to my mom for support, he would say things like, "You only go to your mom and your grandmother because they tell you what you want to hear. You don't like to come to me because I'm the only person that'll tell you the truth." And
Mm.
that's something that he has continued to say, I think, most of my life. It's a very manipulative
I was
thing,
just going to say that's very manipulative, and
super
children
manipulative.
immediately will like read into that.
And
So,
I did read into that. And I remember my dad asking my father, like, why is it that you always tell me what I'm doing wrong, but you never tell me anything that I do right? And he
yeah.
just said to me, well, if I'm not telling you that you did something wrong, then just assume that it's right. Like, he couldn't even really compliment me, praise me, or anything like that. And then our relationship just got more and more contentious as I became a teenager and my parents were split up. And there was one point where I was at my dad's house and I wanted to, spend time with him basically. And he
Mm.
made us all basically, he told us all to go outside, go in the park next door, don't come back inside until he tells us. And I was
Mm.
really upset because I just wanted to spend time with my dad.
Mm.
And I remember calling my mom because I was crying outside, and I was probably like 12 or 13 years old at this point. And I was crying outside. And so my stepsister's friend was like, well, come to my house and call like your mom. I called my mom. My mom's like, I'm going to come pick you up. And in that whole situation of her coming to pick me up, she also called the police because she didn't
Yeah.
think that my father was going to let me leave.
Mm-hmm.
And it went into a cascade of events where my father was arrested, I think, for like unpaid parking tickets or something like
Mm-hmm.
really stupid, but ultimately then blamed me for why he spent the night in jail and why he dealt with that because I called my mom. And I'm the one that started the chain of events when I should have just stayed
Right.
outside when he told me to stay outside. So
Mm-hmm.
then going forward, I was no longer allowed to go to his house every other weekend with my siblings. So my sister and brother would continue to go to my father's house, but I was not allowed to. And
Mm.
so I started helping my mom's friend who lived about 45 minutes from us to babysit her kids like during weekends where I'd go and stay at her house for the weekend or I'd stay in the summer at her house for the week and I'd help her with the kids around the house and like do little things. And she was a little bit younger than my mom. My mom was only 20 years older than me. She had me when she was 20. So her friend
Mm.
was, probably 10 or 15 years older than me, I think, at that point, maybe 15 years older than me. So she kind of felt like my friend too. Um, and it was when I went down to visit her, started when I was 13 years old, is when I met the kid across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 18 years old at the time, and his friends all 18 and 19 years old. And I started hanging around him when I was down there, and my mom's friend let me. And
Yeah.
I think back on this a lot, where he would come and sit on the front steps of her house, and they'd be drinking and having, drinks together.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really drank that much and whatnot, but this guy became somebody that obviously I'm a 13-year-old girl. Here's this
Right.
cute older boy. And I know a psychology behind like when you don't have your dad in your life and like you look
Mm.
to somebody who seems more mature and is interested in you.
Yeah.
And so over time, basically, we began to did not have sex, but we began to be like sexually involved. And
Mm.
I didn't even really realize what it was that was happening sometimes because I
Yeah.
was so young and so inexperienced. Like I had kissed boys and made out with boys before, and that's kind of what I was expecting in kind of this little, hookup or whatever it is that you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my knowledge of sex at the time is like basics where you're a kid and you're like, oh, I know what the bases are, like first base, second base, third base, but
Yeah.
you don't really have this knowledge behind why these things are something that are part of a sexual experience or why it's supposed to be pleasurable or why somebody else would be turned on by it. So I
Right.
was just very naive at the time. And to me, it was almost like it felt weird, but it's like, oh, I guess I checked off like things on a list. And this guy became somebody that I was involved with off and on
Mm-hmm.
until the time I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
So, and during that time, he was in and out of jail for a lot of drug related things.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
this is somebody that I really cared for, but
Mm-hmm.
who treated me as disposable all the time.
Yeah.
And it was always an in and out of my life type of thing. And
Mm.
honestly, I remember when I was 16 and I did lose my virginity, it wasn't to him. It was to somebody that I was dating in my school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling my mom's,
Yeah.
but I remember calling my mom's friend to tell her about it. And he was at her house at the time
Mm-hmm.
and he hopped on the phone. He's like, would you tell her? And I said, that I had lost my virginity. And his response was, really? Damn, I thought it'd be me. And I think back on that now and I'm like, what a creepy fucking comment. Like, sorry,
Yeah.
mind
Oh,
my
you're
mouth,
fine.
but
You're fine.
I have a little bit of a mouth on me. I try to contain it
This
sometimes.
is an adult podcast. You are fine.
Okay. So, yeah, it's like, what the fuck? And I think back on it now where I'm like, wow, even when I started young, like he really was grooming me. Like he was really
Mm-hmm.
hoping that he was going to be able to take this young girl's virginity. And
Yeah.
I just I didn't see it as inappropriate at the time. It took me years to understand that
Mm-hmm.
he was in the wrong and that it wasn't something that I necessarily played a role in where I deserve so much blame for the things that happened between us.
Right.
I carried around so much shame
Mm-hmm.
over all the sexual incidents with him. I
Yeah.
did eventually sleep with him when I was 16 or
Mm-hmm.
17 years old because like I said, he was in and out of my life
Mm-hmm.
all the time, for when it was convenient.
Mm-hmm.
But I carried around so much shame in my early teens and I mean my late teens and early 20s over that relationship because I blame myself for it, you
Right,
know.
as kids do. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that, Samantha. I mean, wow, 13 years old. Like, I just think back to when I was 13 and just how innocent you are as a young girl and your body's changing. And, you
I
know,
see my friends' kids now at 13 and
yeah,
I'm like, wait, that's how small I was? Like
I
that's
know.
how young I
I even
was?
see like 18-year-olds to 21-year-olds, and I'm like, they look like children. Like,
They
I can't
do,
believe
yeah.
I was an adult. Like, at that age, I looked like a little kid.
Yeah.
But I just want to just backtrack a little bit. I found it interesting when you were talking about how you cared for this 18-year-old boy and he didn't care for you. And it made me think of like the relationship that you had with your dad and the similarities there, and that you also held a lot of responsibility and weight for like their behavior, which
Yeah.
you didn't need to. And I also want to touch on shame because I know we talked about this offline,
Mhm.
that a lot of survivors of sexual assault carry so much shame And I know that also the grooming and predatory behavior is something that you would like to touch more on. So, Samantha, I wonder if you'd feel comfortable just going into a little bit more detail about the sexual assault that you kind of endured with this 18-year-old man. I shouldn't say boy. And also, if you could touch on some of like the grooming and predatory behaviors that now as an adult you recognize, but maybe you didn't from 13 onwards.
Yeah, and honestly, I wish I could say that this was the only older guy, but it wasn't. He was just the only older guy that was in and out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember sitting on the front steps of my mom's friend's house, and she had gone inside to go to sleep for the night and kind of left us out there. And I think back on that and I'm like, what the hell was she thinking? Like, where were the
Right.
adults in this situation? And
Yeah.
I also think about his mom and his older sister too, because they were aware that I was this 13-year-old girl hanging
Yeah.
around him and hanging around at her house. Like, how is his mom not like, you can't have this girl here. You shouldn't be hanging out with this girl. Like, you're going to get yourself into trouble. This is wrong. Like, how
Hmm.
did nobody like say anything or do anything to say like this is inappropriate?
Yeah.
But I remember sitting on her front steps with him and us starting to like make out
Hmm.
and him putting his hands, under my shirt, into my pants, and me not knowing at the time why, because I didn't
Hmm.
understand like what the purpose of these, sexual acts really were. So like for me, I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting to third base, I guess. And that's kind of how I saw it.
Hmm.
And him and I didn't sleep together and didn't have sex until I was old enough to drive to his house at 17 years old and be with him alone. Otherwise, everything
Hmm.
that happened between us was always either late at night in front of my mom's friend's house and like once in
Yeah.
a while like in his backyard in the pool, because my mom's friend would let me go to his house to go swimming even though my mom was like, no, you're absolutely not allowed to go there. That But my mom knew this kid was 18. She didn't know that I was hanging out with him. She
Right.
just had a crush on him, and she told
Hmm.
me, my mom was like, no, you are not to be around him.
Yeah.
But her friend made it possible for
Yeah.
me to be able to be around
Yeah.
him.
And can I just ask, so you mentioned your mum's friend. How old was she at this time?
I want to say, let's see, if I was like, she was probably 30.
Okay. And then you said that the 18-year-old man's mother and sister were there, like,
They
as
knew
well.
about it. They
Like,
always saw me around.
yeah.
By the time I was in high school and graduating from high school,
Mhm.
his mom was sending me graduation cards. Like when he went to jail, his mom gave me his address there for me to write letters to him. Like,
Yeah.
I think she saw this innocent, like,
Hmm.
good girl kind of thing in me. And by the time I was like 16 or 17 years old and her son is 21, 22 in jail, like she's thinking, oh, this girl could be a good influence on him or something. I don't know, but I'm just like, how do you not say anything? How do you not even say anything to the
Right.
girl and be like, honey, you shouldn't be here?
Yeah, because that's also like my question, because like they may not have been there during like the very intimate moments, but
Right.
even just seeing you kissing, like
Knowing we're
that
hanging
is like
out.
you're being present to a crime. Like you're
Yes.
13 years old, right? And that makes me kind of want to touch on consent for
Hmm.
everyone who's listening, right? Because we live in a very patriarchal society where women have to over explain themselves and justify, and, what were you wearing? Why didn't you say no? But something that you said really stuck with me about, like, you didn't even know, like,
Hmm.
what some of these sexual acts, like, were, or like what their purpose was. Did your mum ever kind of go over like the birds and the bees with you, or?
You know, I honestly don't remember. I remember being when my parents were still together. So I had to be like 9 or 10 years old. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think the boys were starting to like talk about like, their private parts and whatnot. So I remember
Hmm.
like my dad and my mom taking me in the room and like telling me, like, this is the parts that girls have, this is the parts that
Hmm.
boys have, like, but I don't remember specific conversations
Hmm.
around like what different like sexual acts were. I feel like a lot of things I learned
Hmm.
were between somebody older
Hmm.
exposing me to it, or
Hmm.
learning about something in like sex ed class, like learning
Wow.
that there's like things that are pleasurable, like about the experience and why and all of that.
Right.
And those are things that, like, no, I don't really have a memory of like my parents really like sitting me like, or my mom. Like, it was just
Yeah.
my mom wasn't the type to really like be that like intimate about like certain
Yeah.
things, like you could go to my mom about anything. I could tell my mom anything, um, except that I was hanging around older guys.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is really scary. Like, to experience that and not even know like what's happening, and be
mhm,
like processing that with, such a young brain.
yeah,
Um, and the thing with predators and grooming is you don't see it coming.
no, and you
So,
don't recognize it because you're so young,
mhm,
you know, and just you're beginning to have like, this attraction to, the opposite sex or the same sex, but you're beginning to have like some sort of like, sexual like feeling and like hitting puberty.
yeah,
So your hormones start getting
yeah,
going. So you have like, oh, I want to kiss a boy, or I want to have a boyfriend, or this and that.
right.
But
But
it's like,
it's different to
so
boys because
it's
it's more romantic for
right,
young girls. It's like,
right.
oh, it would be so nice to hold their hand or hug them.
Right. And so like
Yeah.
this older guy that's like inviting me over, and we're going swimming, and he's got his arms
Mm,
around me, he's kissing me, and to me that's like, oh, he cares about me. But I
right.
remember then, after the first time that something sexual had happened between us, the next time I went down to my mom's friend's house, which was only I think a few weeks later, there was like a girl that was at his house the entire
Mhm.
week that I was there that turned
Yeah.
out was like his girlfriend at the time.
Oh my
And
god.
I remember like asking one of his friends, like, where is he right now? Because I didn't
Mhm.
realize at the time he's like doing adult things with his girl.
Right. Yeah, it just didn't click for you. And like, let's talk more about like some of the signs of predatory and grooming behavior for like
Mhm.
people who are listening that are not really understanding what consent is, because you can't consent at 13 years old as a child, first of all, to anything. And then also, you definitely weren't consenting because you didn't understand what was going on.
Mhm.
So, like, what are some of the behaviors
Like
that he showcased that now as an adult, like, you can be like, wow, that was grooming and predatory behavior?
Like, I remember right away him coming over as soon as he saw me, coming over and talking to me, and like asking me just like what I was doing there, trying to get to know
Mhm.
me a little bit better. And then I remember when we were finally, walking, I think, to the store as a group with like my mom's friend and his friends, he finally asked how old I was. And I was like, oh, I'm 13. He's like, oh, you look like you're like 16, 17 years old,
Uh,
you're so like beautiful. Like, basically making me feel like I'm older than I am,
Yeah.
you know,
Mature for your
more
age.
mature. You're so mature for your age. Like I would have never guessed that and stuff like that. I remember him giving me like his pager number and telling me to like, reach out to him,
Hmm.
just like different things. And anytime that I was there at my mom's friend's house, he was always coming by, always kind of like looking at me in, just this kind of way where it made me feel special,
Yeah.
And he would hold my hand, put his arm around me, like just
Hmm.
constantly tell me like how beautiful I am. And at the
Yeah.
time I was super insecure. Like I had been made fun of when I was younger and like bullied for my looks. So now to have like this older guy that thinks that I'm so beautiful
Hmm.
and is like pursuing things, he wants me to page him, he wants me to reach out to him. And then even when he like broke up with the girl that he was with, I remember him like reaching out to me and saying like, she was such a mess, like she wasn't like good, like I know how you're such a good girl. And then he started when I was probably about like 15, he started driving up to where I lived and like he'd meet me at a movie theater or something and like take me to
Yeah.
see a movie with him. And whatever things would happen in the movie theater, we'd like make out, we'd do different things. And
Right.
it wasn't until we could actually be like alone together
Hmm.
that, and it was the first time that we were alone together, we had
Hmm.
sex, you know,
Right.
like leading up to that, there wasn't really an opportunity for it to happen.
Hmm.
Um, but I think he was keeping me in his life,
Yeah.
where he knew how to get me hooked. He knew how to make me feel a little bit special for a little bit of time. And the fact that he said, like, damn, I thought it'd be me when he found out
Right. That
my
is
mom
so
was with it,
creepy.
it's like he really did. Like, he was
Hmm.
waiting for the time that me and him could be alone together
Yeah.
because he was hoping that he would be the one. And I mean,
Yeah.
at the time, I was 16 when I lost my virginity, so he was 21. So, like, he was still an adult that I wasn't. And the really messed up thing is that years later, I found out from one of his friends
Hmm.
that he was also messing around with my mom's friend.
Oh God. Your mum's friend honestly like sounds just so irresponsible. Like
Very,
it's
very much so. And
yeah.
unfortunately, she passed away a long
Yeah.
time ago. One of the last
Mhm.
times I saw him as in my early 20s was at her funeral. Um,
Yeah.
but
That
yeah,
must have been such a strange experience for you.
yeah,
How
very,
did you
very
react when
much.
you saw him?
Um, it's weird because at the time I still felt like there was a bond there.
Hmm.
Like I didn't recognize like how fucked up that whole thing was
Hmm.
until I want to say I was like 27 years old, 28
Yeah.
years old. Um, I had, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, but I had gotten, after getting involved with the church and everything, I ended up
Hmm.
getting married very young.
Yeah.
And after that relationship ended, I experienced as an adult a sexual assault
Hmm.
by somebody that I knew from when I was younger. And
Yeah.
that's when everything started to click for me
Right.
about how predatory all of these men were towards me. Um,
Yeah.
and I had gone after I ended things with my ex husband. I had actually gone and met up with this guy. I was like 26 years old, I think, or 25.
The guy that was 18.
The same guy,
Wow.
and met up with him. and he had just gotten out of jail for he was in jail for a while for I think
Do
like
you mind me asking what he was in jail for?
I think it was like drug related charges.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember going and talking to him because I felt like I needed some closure.
Mm-hmm.
And him saying like, "Oh yeah," like me asking like, "Did you ever like care about me?" Like what there was so much like up and down where I feel like you like messed with my heart because at the time I was still feeling like he broke my heart, not that he groomed me.
Right. Yeah.
I remember him saying like I was just so messed up on drugs that like I'm glad that me and you never like fully got together because you were too good for me. I messed up your life. I would have messed up your life. And I remember like forgiving him and feeling like I let go of that
Mm-hmm.
until like it really hit me maybe a year later what I exactly was forgiving. And then I was like, no, wait, I don't forgive this. Like, I'm not letting
Yeah.
you, like, no, you're not off the hook for this. Like, this was really, really, really messed up what you
Yeah.
did to me. And
Yeah.
I genuinely it's been very, very hard sometimes for me to not want to look him and his mom and sister up on Facebook because up until like 10 years ago, I was still connected with them on like social
Oh
media and
my
everything,
gosh.
maybe 15 years ago. But it was
Mhm.
very hard for me to not send them a message and be like, excuse me, but what the fuck were y'all thinking? Like,
Yeah.
wanting
Yeah.
to send a message to his mom and his sister to be like, why were you like allowing this at your house? Why were you allowing me to like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
me so much wanting to send him a message to say, like, I didn't know what I was forgiving last time I saw you. Like, I
Mm.
was still really naive, just coming out of being in like a really culty, like Bible school environment.
Yeah.
So I was still very naive and very much like, oh, God tells us to forgive, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I was forgiving. And like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not, you're not off the hook for this. Like, what you did to me
Yeah.
was messed up. And you deserve to know that what you did to me was messed up.
Yeah. And it's also like forgiveness is such a tricky concept
Hmm.
because, as sexual assault victims, we're told to forgive, but that's not actually always the case that everyone personally
No. And it's
needs.
not always healing to forgive.
It's
Like,
not.
sometimes
Yeah.
that
I
anger
mean,
can be healthy. If the anger is overwhelming you, great. But
mm,
like, sometimes that anger can be in a healthy way where it drives you to not want to see it happen to other people
yeah.
or to
Like
speak
what
how you see
what
them.
I've found like healing is having empathy and understanding for like a human that may have abused someone, like maybe
Hmm.
something happened in their childhood or like you said, but you don't
Same
actually
thing.
have to forgive them. Like
Exactly.
anger is you protecting your inner child. And
Hmm.
I just want to also mention like it must have been really hard for your mum's friend to pass away as well because you probably have unresolved anger towards her. And when you were talking about that you guys were all walking to the shops and this 18-year-old man is asking you questions and complimenting you, oh, you're so pretty and mature for your age. I can't imagine being like a 30-year-old woman and listening to that in earshot. I would be like, I beg your pardon. Like, what are you talking
Exactly.
about? And so, like the mum, the sister, and your mum's friend are very complicit in this
Hmm.
abuse. Um, and I kind of want to backtrack a little bit and then we can move forward to the religious
Yeah.
um, trauma that you've experienced. But I just want to also touch on the what groomers and predators do is like kind of like love bombing you, gaslighting you, blaming you for everything for their behavior.
Hmm.
And then also they fetishize young people, young children. Like the wanting to take your virginity is a very common theme with sexual
Hmm.
abuse and assault, and such a creepy statement from this 18-year-old man But also, what people don't realize with abusers is that it's also about power. So, like, that makes sense that he got upset that you lost your virginity, because it's all about, like, how can I control this
Mm-hmm.
victim? They get off on the power as well as the
Mm-hmm.
abuse. So I just want to just mention that. Um, and if it's okay with you, let's just take a quick pause
Mm-hmm.
before we move on to the religious trauma, unless you want to say anything else for that. But that was amazing. Thank you so much. I think,
No, I think that's good. It's
yeah,
been a while since I've really talked about that, so it's kind of good to go
yeah.
through that in more detail because I haven't really been able to have an opportunity to speak publicly about it, and I'm glad that I can. It's really unfortunate that my mom's friend was as irresponsible as she was. But one thing that I will say is I'm still in touch with her daughter,
Mhm.
through social media
Wow.
despite the fact that my mom's friend was irresponsible, her daughter grew up to be the most amazing young girl, and I loved babysitting her when I was younger. So I'm thankful that I'm still in touch with her.
That's so big of you, and it speaks to your trauma as well. That even though you have suffered, that you are always thinking of other people,
Hmm.
and
And
kind
she
of
was so
like,
young too. Like she didn't
yeah,
know what was going on, like
of
she was a
course.
young kid. She was a child that I was babysitting.
Yeah, and a
So
lot of, like, abuse is so complicated and layered, and there are so many people involved, and that's why a lot of people don't speak up because they don't want to hurt other people.
yeah, so I first started going to church actually when I was like 16 years old with one of my friends who invited me, and I felt really like happy when I was there. It was like there was a place where I felt included, and having come from a lot of the experiences that I did have and not having my dad around, it was
Hmm.
nice to have that like positive influence in my life.
Hmm.
Um, but it also subjected me to some of the purity culture that's within the church that blames girls for men's bad behavior, and
Right.
that played a role in my internalizing the things that happened to me as my own fault, my own sin, and things like that. But I got into really, I want to say, like high control type churches after high school because I ended up moving in with my dad.
Hmm.
So I had been going to church
Okay.
for a while and I loved it. And my dad had started going to a church where he lived in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And there were some circumstances that kind of manipulated me into moving there, basically, with he was
Hmm.
going to have me, wanted me to go to court and testify against my mom to say that she allowed us to drink in the house and whatnot, and was telling me like that's the Christian thing to do, to be honest. And so he basically put me in a position where one, the judge did and never wanted to hear from me. He told him he was out of his mind. But at that point, like the damage kind of seemed to be done of me kind of feeling like, well, I can't stay at my mom's house anymore now that like I was
Yeah.
going to do something so terrible. So I went and lived with my dad,
Yeah.
and his church, very high controls. They're like a Pentecostal church where they place a lot of like um, there's a lot of authority in the pastor and a lot of authority in like the man as the head of the household. And it was
Hmm.
in that church that I met my first husband. We were like both youth leaders in the church, and we had started, dating about a year after like I moved to by my dad's. Because I moved to my dad's, I was there for about a year, and then I went to college from there.
Hmm.
Um, but him and I had started dating, and kind of in that culture, you get engaged and get married very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember I was struggling with anxiety really badly. I was having a lot of panic attacks, and I was dating him, but I was thinking of breaking up with him. And I remember having a conversation with my dad and him telling me, that's just your anxiety getting the best of you. Like, if you break up with him, it's just because you're afraid that what happened with me and your mom is going to happen with you guys, and then you're going to miss out on this opportunity to be like with a guy who's going to be a pastor and you guys could serve God together and all this stuff.
Oh
And
my
I didn't trust
gosh.
my own instincts at the time.
Mhm.
I had kind of been trained not to trust my instincts, and I was so insecure and so afraid of being alone,
Mhm.
um, that I believed that it was just my anxiety that was giving me doubts. And so, like, I moved forward in the relationship, and we got engaged like 5 months after we were dating, and we were married like 9 months later. And then we moved to Texas to go to a Bible school.
Mhm.
It's called Christ for the Nations in Dallas. And there, I think my mental health faced like the worst period of time for me.
Mhm.
Um, the anxiety that I felt at that place was overwhelming. And I could go into details for hours about the types of things that they do and teach that are super manipulative. But when it comes to mental health, for me, I struggled so much with anxiety, and to them, that was a sign of a lack of faith. And in that community, you don't go and seek mental health treatment outside of the church. You don't take medication. If you take medication, you're not trusting God. If you're going to secular therapists, you're not trusting God. If you're
Mhm.
having anxiety, you either have a lack of faith or maybe you have allowed demons into your life in some way because you're doing something that God's not approving of. So I remember literally being afraid that everything was causing these demons to attack me and give me so much
Mhm.
anxiety. I even stopped listening to the Backstreet Boys for a couple of like years
Which,
while
by
I
the way, if anyone's listening, Samantha's like obsessed with
was
the
I'm
Backstreet
wearing a
Boys.
Backstreet Boys shirt actually.
And she also uses going to concerts and pop culture related things as like healing her inner
Oh
child. So
yeah,
we'll talk about
definitely,
that in a little bit, but just hilarious that you
definitely.
brought that up.
But I really did. I was just during that time, I was so miserable, and there's so much of
Mhm.
it that is honestly a fog because it was just
Mhm.
nonstop anxiety.
Mhm.
And people would pray for me, people would yell to cast demons out of me. Like it was a very emotional type environment that they put you
Mhm.
in where you got like your emotions heightened. And at a time in my life when I desperately needed to be seeing like mental health professionals,
Mhm.
I was instead being subjected to you don't have enough faith, you're not trusting God. You're like basically blaming me for my mental health issues, not reading my Bible enough, whatever it is that I'm not doing enough.
Well, because that's easier,
Yeah.
right? Than
And
like to
honestly,
blame women.
I think with some higher control type churches,
Mhm.
whether they'll say it or not, is when you go to get mental health treatment outside of the church and you start understanding abuse dynamics, you might not
Mm.
want to be part of the church.
Right. And Samantha, just for me, like I grew up in Australia, so, you know, I watch documentaries on kind of like Bible Belt America growing up.
Mhm.
What is the difference between like normal Christianity and like Pentecostal Christianity?
So, Pentecostal Christianity, like they believe in a bunch of supernatural gifts that we all have right now. So, they're going to be praying in tongues. They believe that in praying for healing, they believe that like the Holy Spirit comes down, speaks through us. They believe very much in modern day prophets, and the
Mhm.
modern day prophets and apostles are considered authorities like in the faith, that they hear directly from God. So what they're saying in their prophecies is directly from what God is saying. And some of these leaders that were brought before us as guest lecturers or as the teachers
Mhm.
were heavily involved in calling Christians to DC on January 6th.
Oh
So
my gosh.
that's the type of
Right.
people that I was involved with while I was there.
Got it. Got it. And just to understand, so you moved to Texas with your new husband,
Hmm.
and you were both youth, like, what is it? Youth,
So we were like youth leaders. We were
youth
working in youth
leaders. Yeah.
groups. Yeah. And it
Okay.
was during that time that they taught us how to share our testimony
Mhm.
and share about what we experienced and how God changed us. And that's when I started to share about what I had experienced as a teenager, except from the point of view of blaming myself,
Yeah.
me being sinful and promiscuous and all of that, and how God saved my life. So that was a lot of what I did, was share my personal testimony, connect with kids, and I was kind of like the poster child for purity culture.
That is so crazy. And like, I feel like I just got a pit in my stomach when you said that you were promiscuous. Made me really sad, just hearing your story, because it's almost like you had to say that to not be judged by
Mhm.
these men in this church. And did you know deep down that that wasn't the case, or
No,
did you actually believe that you were promiscuous
no,
at
I
the
really blamed myself
time?
for a very long time. And I get so angry when I think back on this story
Yeah,
because me, as even 30, 40, I'm 41 years old now, but even from the time I was like in my early 30s, I would think back to how often I would share this story and I would say that I started becoming promiscuous at 13 with guys that are 18 and 19 years old, and how nobody, not one like adult or adulty or adult, someone who was
yeah,
more of an adult than me at my little adult age at the time,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
nobody ever came up to me and was like, "What do you mean by you became promiscuous at 13 with 18 and 19-year olds? Like what is that? What exactly does that mean? Because it sounds like you were preyed on, and
yeah,
this is not your fault and this is not your story. It's their shame to carry, not yours." But
exactly. Yeah.
instead, I was praised for turning my life around, and
And you said you were used as like a poster child for purity. Can you first of all, can you explain to our listeners what does that even mean?
so
And then also just like your experience, like how did that feel? Like uh,
yeah.
having to kind of wear that costume.
Like within Christianity, they very much have a focus on sex and basically avoiding sex before marriage and it
Yeah,
being a huge sin. So in purity culture, a lot of the responsibility is put on girls to
yeah,
maintain the sexual boundaries, where boys are considered, you know, hormonal, unable to control their urges. And it's girls' responsibility to make sure that we dress the right way and that we
mm,
act modestly so that we don't tempt our brothers in Christ into sin from the way that we dress, the way that we act. And if there is something that happens, within sexual sin, it's often the girl that gets shamed more often because
yeah,
boys, it's they basically teach it as if boys are just these uncontrollable hormonal, you know,
yeah,
machines that you have
thing.
to stop. And
Yeah,
it places a very dangerous message out there that guys can't control their hormones, so it's a girl's
yeah,
responsibility to make it stop,
mhm,
because it leads to opportunities for sexual abuse and sexual
mhm,
assault.
yeah,
And girls like me end up blaming themselves for
yeah.
things that happen.
So not only are young girls like made to like carry this huge responsibility to conduct themselves in a type of way that doesn't tempt young men, but also they have this really high standard to hold and almost be put on a pedestal to be pure. So,
Yep.
like, what did that entail, like, for you?
For me, it entailed like one, I literally wore a purity ring on my ring finger that symbolized that I wasn't going to have sex until I was married.
Mhm, mhm,
But what would happen is you mess up and then you start to like carry the guilt and shame of all of that.
mhm,
And for me, because I had had these experiences with these older guys, I carried around a lot of shame in, relation to those things that had happened. So
mhm,
even like standing up to share my story of redemption, there was still so much shame that
mm,
I was carrying around. Like, what kind of redemption was it really? Like,
yeah,
it was a good story for them to, get their message across, but there was nobody that was like, Sammy, this was not your
yeah,
story. It was not your shame
yeah.
to carry.
And I feel like because it wasn't your truth, right? So it's like when you speak your truth, like you're meant to feel liberated and empowered, but you
Mhm.
didn't really get anything out of it.
No,
Like,
it was just me sharing my shame
yeah,
basically with other people. And I feel like during that time, I probably re traumatized myself every
yeah,
time I share that story.
mhm,
And I honestly wonder very often if somebody had come up to me
mhm,
and said those things to me and explained to me what predatory behavior was like,
mhm,
if I might have recognized it in another relationship that I had when I was younger that was more of
yeah,
a friendship, because I ended up, when I divorced my first husband,
mhm,
I reconnected with somebody I knew from when I was younger,
mhm.
and he forced himself on me.
And this was the second assault, basically, in your
Yes,
life.
by a
Yeah.
different guy. And
Mhm,
so basically, I had met this guy when I was a camper, and he was a camp counselor at a Bible camp.
mm,
And I had a huge crush on him. I think I was 14 years old when I started going to camp, and he was 19.
mhm,
And I had a huge, huge, huge crush on him. He knew that. But him and a bunch of other people, like we all exchanged numbers, like within like the different churches. And there was like a group of us that would hang out like together. And he was the oldest one in the group, supposedly like the leader and whatnot. And like he'd call me, I'd call him. He was one that always said like I love you when you got off the phone to like all of his, like supposedly he says it to everybody,
mhm,
but like that made me feel loved. I was head over heels for this guy,
mhm.
and he kind of egged me on. Like, I think he liked the fact that I liked him, and he
Yeah.
liked the attention from younger girls. And he's another one that was in my life for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when I was 16 years old, like he kissed me and made out with me as part of my birthday present. And so like now looking back on that, I'm like, wow, that is super weird. But
That's also very like narcissistic to say like, "Oh, like you've won.
yes.
Hang out with me."
And
Like,
he had a girlfriend at the time too, and was
yeah,
like, this can't mean anything. I live like, because he lived in Long Island. He
mhm,
basically made me believe that, like, if we lived in different places, if we lived closer, that like we would be together. He came to my senior prom as my prom date.
how
So
old was he?
at this point, he was 22 years old and I was 17.
And your school allowed that?
I don't know that I don't necessarily know that they knew what his age was,
Right.
you
They just
know,
like
like
didn't fact check it.
they,
Yeah.
like you buy your tickets and to the senior prom, you can invite somebody that doesn't go to the
Yeah.
school.
I think like also it's like a different time back then. Like we're both like elder millennials. So like it's
Mhm.
like not as like crazy for that to happen back then, but it wouldn't happen now.
No, you would check
Like,
you would like check IDs, you would check
yeah.
like everything.
Yeah. And also like while you were talking, I just heard like kind of like a pattern with these like older men, like the 18-year-old and now this camp counselor, both had girlfriends and were kind of like keeping you a secret. So that just goes to show that they knew that they were grooming you and it was
Mhm.
predatory behavior and that it was wrong.
Mhm.
Because, like, why else would it be like this secret, like, and two timing, or if you can even call it that because you were a child? Like, so yeah, like, it's just interesting how that is like a common
And, like, by
theme.
the time my prom came around, he didn't have a girlfriend anymore. He, like, made out with me at the
Mm,
prom and
yeah,
everything, held my hand, like, was the prom date that of my dreams at the time,
yeah.
you know? But then, like, afterwards, it's like, we still can't, like, be together, though. Like, I don't wanna be, like, in a relationship. It's long distance, blah, blah, blah. And I even remember when I graduated from high school and I was living with my dad, I came back to New Jersey to visit, and I went out to visit him and grab like a hotel room in Long Island so that we could
Hmm.
like go out and then I could have a place to sleep. But he ended up coming just to the room to
Right.
like
Yeah.
hang out. He's like, "Why don't we order food here? Why don't we do this?" And I remember him like kissing me and then saying like, if stuff happens tonight, I don't want you to think that it means we can. And I'm like, I'm not. At that
Oh
point, I
my
was like 18.
God.
I was like, well, I'm not a child. I understand that, and I live in Pennsylvania now. And honestly, like I had my period, so nothing went that far in terms of that
Mhm.
night. But we stopped speaking when I got married. One of the
Mhm.
only things that I can give that ex credit for, because he was
Yeah.
very narcissistic as well, was that he saw that something wasn't right in that friendship and told me he
Mhm.
was uncomfortable with it.
Your ex-husband's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I stopped talking to him for a few years.
Mhm.
And then when I got divorced, we reconnected.
Mhm.
Um, and we were being flirty,
Mhm.
in text messages and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I invited him to come hang out at my apartment after we hung out with our families on Easter
Mhm.
of like 2013.
Mhm.
Um, we had, I think it was 2013, could have been 2013.
Mhm.
And he brought over like a bottle of wine and stuff. And I wasn't like a major drinker, but I had
Mhm.
like a glass of wine. We started like making out, fooling around a little bit. And
Mhm.
I specifically told him that I just got divorced, so I wasn't ready to
Right.
sleep with anybody,
Yeah.
like that. I was down to like fool around a little bit, but I wasn't ready to have
Mhm.
sex with anybody since
Mhm.
my divorce. And I remember not being completely like wasted, but from
Mhm.
like 1.5 glasses of wine for somebody that doesn't drink,
Mhm.
like very much like not in control of myself.
Mhm.
So it didn't matter how many times I was like, I don't want to have sex tonight. Like, I didn't stop him from like taking off my shirt or taking off like, anything else because I physically couldn't, you know?
But also, like, I like you hear about a lot of survivors of sexual abuse after they say verbally, I don't want to do this. Like they can go into like freeze mode, like
And
fight
that's
or
what
flight.
happened. And
Yeah,
that's
so
what
it
happened
sounds
when
like
he
that's what
did.
happened.
And
Yeah.
I remember him saying, like, let me go get a condom and whatnot. And me saying, no, I'm not ready to do that.
Hmm.
Um, and Then I felt a pain that I've never felt before because he sodomized me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Samantha.
And he only stopped because I screamed and cried. And
Hmm.
when I screamed and cried, he got off of me and he was like, "Sorry, sorry, I'm not an asshole. I'm not an asshole. I'm not an asshole."
Wow.
Um, and then a few minutes later, was sitting on my bed with his penis still out, and said to me
Mhm.
like, "Well, are you gonna just leave me hanging like this before
Are
I
you
go?"
kidding me?
No. And at that point, I felt like scared that until
Mhm.
he got what he wanted, that he wasn't going to leave. I ended up giving him a hand job just to get
Mhm.
him to get out of there, just to like basically give him an orgasm so that he would go because I just wanted him to go away. And I woke up the next day in a lot of pain. And it never registered to me that I could go to the hospital and get a rape kit. I just believed it was going to be my word against his and that I wouldn't be believed. And I tried to rationalize what happened, like, oh, I was drinking too much, I wasn't clear, I wasn't
Mhm.
this. But like, no, you don't do that to somebody, even
Yeah.
if you're in a consensual relationship, unless you guys have spoken about
Mhm.
it and made preparations and whatever. And I remember him texting me the next day, like, kind of saying something like, "Oh, you have fun last night?" And me being like, "No, I'm actually in pain. Like, you hurt me." And him being like, "My bad, I'm sorry. But it seemed like you liked it, basically telling me you were wet." And I was like, "Okay, that's a body's natural reaction sometimes to things, but that doesn't mean that I was comfortable or
Right.
that I'm okay. Like, I'm in pain right now."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was the last time I spoke to him.
Mhm.
Like, I stopped talking to him after that. And it still to this day bothers me that I
Mhm.
didn't realize that there was evidence and that it wouldn't
Yeah.
just be my word against him,
Mhm.
especially as I think back to like how much pain I was in. Um, and like this is honestly the first time that I'm sharing this story
Mhm.
in detail, like
Mhm.
publicly. And I
Mhm.
know that there are going to be some of my friends that may listen to this and
Mhm.
know exactly who I'm speaking about based on the
Mhm.
context of how I met him. And there's still a fear of not being believed.
Yeah.
There's still very much a fear of not being believed and carrying around a lot of guilt and shame over that.
Yeah.
And one of the things, especially the people that also knew him through the church and very much love him, and there I very much have had anxiety even recently as I've thought about telling some of my friends from that group what happened to me.
Yeah.
um, but I've feared that maybe they won't believe me, or
Mhm.
you know so it's really hard. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving me the space to be
Oh
able
my
to.
gosh. Yes.
This is the first time that
Um,
like I'm really able to share exactly what happened to me publicly.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I can definitely just like hear in your voice and just your body language how hard that was to kind of like get off your chest. Like you're such a bubbly, positive person, and I saw that shift straight away, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you just took the time to go through that because like as explicit as that is, like these are the types of things that help survivors of sexual abuse. Um,
I
like,
think so too, because we tend to blame ourselves very
mhm,
often and carry shame, and we don't place the blame where it belongs, like on the predators.
yeah.
That it's theirs to hold on to.
And even talking about like bodily functions, Samantha, like, for our listeners who might not really understand like how a body can sexually react while being abused, it is quite normal actually. Like biologically, it doesn't mean that the victim is enjoying what's going on. It's just something that happens. And uh, yeah, again, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And may I just ask, so this was not your ex husband, this was a different man, and he was also in like the church community.
Yeah, I met him because he was a counselor at the Bible camp that I went to, and like
Got it. Yes.
within
Yeah.
that denomination, like a lot
Mhm.
of different churches would come together,
Mhm.
for a week in the summer. So that's
Yeah.
how I met him and some of like my other friends that
Yeah.
I was connected to through, through camp and everything.
And it sounds like because he was in your life for so long, there's a lot of like history and like grooming that was going on there and work to like lay down to get to that, moment.
It wasn't until I told my best friend what happened,
Mhm,
a couple weeks after. I think it maybe like 2 weeks afterwards, my friend that lives
mhm,
in Australia.
mhm.
Um, and one of the things she said to me was, Sam, he's been a predator since you were a kid. Like he's a
Yeah.
groomer.
Yeah.
And that experience, it opened my eyes big time, and it allowed me to see
Mhm.
everything that had happened to me with
Yeah.
complete clarity, and
Mhm.
understanding that like these things were the story I had been telling wasn't the story of what really happened. Like the story I had been telling
Absolutely.
you is based on lies and shame that I'm carrying around, that is theirs to carry, not mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's statistically, victims of sexual abuse have self doubt and very low self esteem. And, I think that you being concerned about if people are going to believe you, and then even questioning yourself the morning after, like, oh, I drank a glass and a half of wine. Those are all like very common and designed by the predator to confuse you. And even him texting you after, like, I
Oh,
wouldn't be
it's so gross.
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that was him trying to get ahead of you, like not going to the authorities.
I'm pretty sure that like, and that's why like thinking back on it, it makes me so mad that I wasn't a little bit smarter about what I did in the immediate aftermath,
Oh my
because
gosh.
I could have held him responsible. I would have been able to, and I would have
But
had evidence. And it was just because at the time I believed that it would have been a he said, she said.
yeah.
And, he's so charming and, likable to so many people. I didn't think that I would be believed. And so
Yeah.
I just worked to heal that myself. And it was like 2 months after
Hmm.
that happened that I started dating the man that was my second husband.
Hmm.
And dating him, it was like a dream come true.
Hmm.
So I felt like at the time I was healing from a lot of things that I had been through, because I was in this new relationship with somebody
Hmm.
that was treating me like absolute gold.
Yeah.
Um, and my second husband and I, we dated for 5 years before we got married.
Hmm.
And I feel like for those 5 years, we barely like fought, like maybe after we got engaged, like there was like little arguments here and there. And him a little frustrated with me struggling with like my anxiety because the ADHD is still undiagnosed.
Yeah.
So I got this underlying anxiety all the time. But I had never been treated so well by somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought I hit the jackpot. And when I got married, it was like the best day of my life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was marrying my best friend, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then after we got married, something switched. It was like a flip switched with him, and he became mean and critical. He'd start yelling at me. He would start cursing at me and putting me down. Um, I remember at one point him telling me that, like, now that I was his wife, that I was like an extension of him. And so the things that I did, reflected on him. And I've even read back to my journals, from those times because I am somebody that journals just about every day. So I've gone back and read them, and really, like, everything was great until we got married. And it was like the minute we got married, it's like he felt like he didn't have to try anymore.
Right.
And shortly after we got married, my mom became very ill.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was her medical power of attorney, and she ended up
Mm-hmm.
having liver disease and needing a liver transplant.
Mm-hmm.
And so my sister, my brother, and I, we all went and got tested to see if we could be donors. And all three of us were perfect matches. So ultimately, my brother wanted to be the one to be the donor so that my sister and I could help my mom recover afterwards because your liver regenerates. So when you donate your liver, you donate half of it, and then yours grows back, and the person in the
Got
donor
it.
grows back. So we almost lost my mom several times leading up to the surgery. She was at one point contracted the flu and double pneumonia and was on a ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being at the hospital. They had like little apartments next door to the hospital that families could stay at when you have somebody that is so sick they really could die at any moment, basically. They have these apartments for you to stay at. And so my sister, my brother, and I had stayed there for almost a week while my mom was, fighting for her life. And I remember when I was coming back home from having been there for a week after my mom was finally out of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and telling my ex, like, calling him up, telling him, like, I'm on my way home. Like, I need to fall apart. I've been keeping it together for everybody for
Right.
a week now.
Yeah.
And, asking him if he could be available for me. And this was definitely the first time I realized he wasn't going to be there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I walked in the door and he was still playing his video games. And like 20 minutes later, still hadn't turned them off. And then when I asked him to, start to fight with me. And I remember his mom had like made some ziti for us. So I went and I put it in the oven, and it was done cooking, and he still hadn't turned off the video game. And or maybe he had, and we were now like arguing about the fact that he still hadn't turned off the video game when I needed him to.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up getting up to go get the ziti out of the oven, and I dropped it all over the floor. And when it fell on the floor, so did I, because at that point I had been so
Right.
exhausted and emotionally drained, and I
Yeah.
started just
Mm-hmm.
crying hysterically. And he came running over, and I thought he was finally going to comfort me, but instead he yelled at me for dropping the ziti that his mom made, and told me to go cry in the room while he cleaned it up. And then the next day yelled at me for not thanking him to clean it up. So I was watching my mom fight for her life and realizing that I could lose her, and at the same time realizing that I don't have the support of the man that I thought loved me. Like, I don't have this relationship that I thought that I had. And
Mm,
um,
gosh.
yeah, that was a really jarring time for me.
I can't even imagine just like the level of cruelty that takes to kick someone when they're at their lowest. Like you were at
Mhm.
rock bottom, you said your mom was your biggest,
My big
support,
supporter.
and you're exhausted mentally, physically, I'm sure, going back and forth.
Mhm.
A normal husband would be probably like going back and forth to the hospital accommodations and getting you stuff, checking in on you, making
Mhm.
themselves available, things like that. Like
Yep.
all
And
that
for
is like
him, he thought being at the hospital, like the days that he felt like he was there for me at the hospital. So in his mind, probably even to this day, he won't accept the fact that he made that period of time so much worse for me. Like he
yeah,
made it a living hell for me. And one of the things you had mentioned before, how I love the Backstreet Boys, is during that time that my mom was going through the transplant and fighting for her life, they announced a tour. And so it was something, me and my friend buying tickets was something that was like fun that we could look
yeah, just to
forward
get out of the
to get
situation.
out of the negativity out of my head. And my ex made my life a living hell over it. He thought that me going to the concert and doing VIP meet and greets was so inappropriate for somebody who was married. And like, I feel like half the fights I had were over the fact that I went to Backstreet Boys concerts in that relationship.
I mean, that is just so crazy. Like, I just, because also, like, let's talk about that because you use, doing these fun, like, silly things as like a means to heal your inner child,
Yeah.
right? So
And I
he didn't
also
know
use
about
it.
that? Did he,
Yeah.
like,
He
yeah,
didn't support it at all. Like to him, like he didn't want to hear anything that I had to
mhm,
say about why this was something that was important to me. To him,
yeah,
I was choosing the Backstreet Boys over him. He didn't like me going to Backstreet Boys concerts, and he would literally compare it to me saying I didn't want him to go to a strip club or to do cocaine.
what?
And yeah,
Has he ever been to a Backstreet Boys
I
concert?
don't think
It's
so.
like
I'm like, you
literally
know, no,
like I've been like it's very
definitely not like a strip
there's
club.
like there's kids there. It's not like a Magic Mike concert
Exactly.
in Vegas. And I will just say, like, Samantha, like, you were so brave while going through that time to find some joy for yourself.
And
Because like
that's something my mom taught me.
I love that.
My mom was somebody who always found the positive and always found good things to look forward to. And my mom taught me that having something to look forward to and like choosing the good things that you add to your life is a way to cope with the bad things that are
Yeah.
going on. So having these concert to look forward to while my mom
Mhm.
was very sick gave me hope. And while my mom was in the hospital recovering from her
Mhm.
transplant, she was fighting for certain things too. Like she wanted to get out and she wanted one of us to have a kid so she could have a grandkid.
Right.
You know,
Hmm.
she wanted to have a family vacation at the beach, and she even like rented the house while she was still in the hospital before she was even out of the woods, because she was like, we're going no
Wow.
matter what. And she wanted to dance with my brother at his wedding, and she fought for those things, and she got to do every single one. One of my brothers had a
Oh.
baby. We went on our family beach trip together. She got to dance with my brother at his wedding. And then about exactly 3 weeks after my brother's wedding, my mom's appendix burst, and her immune system was too compromised to be able to recover from that. And we lost her, and she passed away in September of 2020.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Um, and I also just want to touch on just her kind of like ticking off her bucket list throughout that time. Like that must have inspired you to do this dream,
Honestly,
like almost, yeah,
it inspired me to live my life the way I'm living it now,
yeah,
where I choose the things that bring me joy. I choose the things that allow me to have hope in the midst of difficult times. Like my mom loved us kids. She
yeah,
loved her family. That is where she found her joy. Like she may not have loved the Backstreet Boys, you know. We may have had very different interests in the things that we love, but my mom taught me that especially when you're going through really hard times, is that you have to look for the good too. And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that there's good things in all situations, like
Mm-hmm.
to me, there's nothing good about losing my mom. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no spin I can put on it. Even
Yeah.
the woman that I've become since then, it still doesn't make losing my mom good. There's just
Mm-hmm.
nothing good about it.
Yeah.
But you can choose to look for the things that bring you joy. You can choose to
Yeah.
look for the good things in life so that you don't feel hopeless that the bad things that are happening are all you have in life. So for me, it was like going to these concerts with my friends and being able to look forward to them and do these little meet
Yeah.
and greets where my inner child, like young Sam, would have died for the chance to meet the Backstreet
Right.
Boys. And like
And
adult Sam has adult money and can make those
yeah.
dreams come true. And there's kind of
Yeah.
something that it feels powerful to feel like you have the ability to actually make one of your childhood dreams come true over and over
I
again.
know. I love that. I've done a lot of like healing my inner child as well. And I remember seeing something on like TikTok one time that said, write a letter to your younger self and take them on their dream day out. And by
Oh, I
the
love
time I
that.
had finished writing it, I was like weeping. And
Oh my gosh.
the silliest stuff. Like,
Yep.
like we're gonna go shopping and get some clothes or something. Like, but I was
Yeah.
like, because it's like it just makes me sad that, your ex-husband didn't support you with that
No.
because
And I thought at the time it was okay because he dealt with some insecurities from past relationships. So, like, I wouldn't give it up, but I didn't go to like concerts the way I have been since I haven't been with him or since I was considering, even leaving. But it was just every little thing that
Mhm.
I did, it seemed like he had a problem with. And the other issue was that he didn't understand how my being sexually assaulted and my being groomed affected me. And so when I try to like talk to him about those things, he would shut down. When I would ask him not to approach me in certain ways, he would take that as a rejection of him and we would end up getting into a fight. So it became this like struggle in our sex life because I'm being
Mhm.
treated like shit and because of my
Yeah.
past I don't have any kind of, I mean, I don't know if anybody has a desire to have sex with somebody that treats them like shit, but maybe some people do
Yeah.
have that kind of sex drive and they're
Oh
like
my
able to
gosh.
separate the two, but I was not. So if our
Yeah.
fights were not about the Backstreet Boys, then it was probably about the lack of intimacy. And to him, like those things go hand in hand. But for me, it was the way you're speaking to me, the way you make me feel about myself, the way you put me down.
Yeah.
Like that is what the problem is. And my breaking point came about a year ago, honestly, um, when I came home from a concert of AJ from the Backstreet Boys and Joey from NSYNC. And I was trying to share a piece of it with him. Like Joey does this one part where he takes the song Tearing Up My Heart and he does like a Saint Frank Sinatra type vibe to it.
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking like, oh, like, my ex likes Frank Sinatra. He'll like that, he'll probably
Yeah.
like this. And so I try to share it with him and Joey like hits this high note and everybody in the crowd cheers and me too. I'm like, yeah, Joey. And he was just like, is that you screaming in the background? Do you think that that's appropriate? And it just led into this whole entire argument again. And I said to him, do you I feel like it's easier for you to push me away and try and get me to leave than it is for you to actually deal with whatever it is that's making you insecure about the fact that this is what I enjoy and this is what, that it's innocent and there's nothing threatening to our marriage about it. And he said to me, you think it would be easier for me to lose half this house and half my paycheck and half my 401k? Like, no, it wouldn't be easier. He says nothing about me. And that, like,
It's so emotionally abusive, first of all. Like, this is like,
yeah. And it shattered my rose colored glasses, though. And in
yeah.
that, I literally walked away after hearing that. I was like, I can't believe that he just said that to me.
Yeah.
And I heard my mom's voice in my head, like as if she were in the room speaking to me, where she was like, I raised you better than to let a man treat you that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's right.
That was kind of like your reckoning moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
like looking back on it, probably like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, like, rose-colored glasses are off. Like, this person has gotten so comfortable disrespecting me. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been in a relationship for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Like, you still need to respect your partner. And like, it almost sounded like he was, like, while emotionally abusing you, trying to like parentify you. Like, you're a
Yeah,
child.
very
And
much.
that is very disturbing because in relationships, that is like the number one thing in couples counseling that you learn is like, you are not parenting your partner. Like, you guys are equal, you're adults. And just the impatience that he had, in your intimate life as well, and having like a serious lack of empathy
Mm-hmm.
for abuse that you've endured and trauma. I mean,
He
yeah.
would he would downplay it when I would try and tell him like I'm in therapy, I'm working through like my trauma. He'd like, oh, trauma, you got so much trauma. Like really try to make me feel bad about it. And I'm thankful for my therapist because several times she recommended that I reach out to the local battered women's services.
Hmm.
And she said to me, I'm not an abuse expert, but these people are.
Yep.
And I think you should reach out to them because not all abuse is physical.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until that last time when he said what he said about the money that
Mm.
she recommended I call because I was just in tears over like everything that had happened.
Yeah.
And I finally called, and it was joining their program that
Hmm.
allowed me to gain the education around abuse dynamics that I needed and like set the ball rolling for me to get out of the relationship.
Oh my gosh, that is just so important to hear because, like, there could be someone listening to this today that is like, where the hell do I even start?
Yeah.
But you don't have to do these things alone. You
No, and I
know,
mean,
like,
almost every county or any like city you live
mhm,
in has a battered women's service
mhm,
where you can reach out and speak to somebody that has more
mhm,
education around those dynamics because not
mhm.
all abuse is physical. As a matter of fact, most abusers don't need to physically harm you because they can control you with the way that
Yeah.
they're treating you with their words. And it's typically not until the verbal things no longer work that some of
Mhm,
these men then go to physical acts. And
mhm.
for my ex, he never threatened me, like my own life, but he would threaten to take his life,
Oh,
knowing that that would cause me more trauma.
yeah.
Um, and in like one of the last major fights before I called a lawyer, I asked him to please leave my office because he wouldn't leave me alone. And I was in my home office. I just needed space. And he wasn't giving it to me. And I had gained a little bit of knowledge about abuse dynamics. And so I told him, like, what you're doing to me right now is harassment. And I could call the police if I wanted to and have you removed
Yeah.
from this house, but I'm only asking you to leave my office. And his response to me was, go ahead, Sam, fucking do it. Call the police. I'll run outside with a knife in my hand and let them kill me dead right in front of you. You want to play games?
Wow.
So
I
then it
mean,
was
he
like
definitely
email
knew
or telephone.
what your triggers were.
Yes.
Like, and not that doesn't work for everyone. That's like a very individual thing that he
Yep.
had to learn about you to
Yep.
like manipulate you. So I mean, very smart when it came to uh, emotional abuse, and
Mhm.
like also like women who have been through emotional abuse, um, they have like oftentimes have PTSD, and it can really affect their brain like even years later. So
Mhm.
I think what you said is right about mental abuse can sometimes, it's not worse than physical abuse, but it's like even more
Yep, it has a
powerful
long-term
sometimes.
effect on you.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you most people can't see what is happening. So if you're being
Mhm.
physically abused, there's marks on your body that you
Yeah.
can show. It's really hard to show someone the damage that has been done to your mind because of
Yeah.
something that somebody has done to you. But after all of that, especially with the education that I had gotten around abuse, I knew I needed to get out of that relationship
Yeah.
and started to get the ball rolling for myself to be able to do that. And like I said before, being part of Jersey Battered Women's Services, that was crucial for me because it gave
Mhm.
me a lot of education tools that I needed and a lot of support.
Mhm.
Um, and really like helped me take the steps to get out of the relationship and cheered me on when I was
That
able
is
to.
amazing.
Mhm.
Um, um, so I just want to be mindful of some of the things that we haven't talked about. So I think we should definitely go over ADHD like a little bit. And then um, what else have I got? We've pretty much touched on everything. Like you've
Yeah, I
been
can just
honestly
touch
one of
on.
my best interviews I've ever done. Like
Oh
honestly,
my God, thank
um,
you.
like you're such a good talker. So I thought we could go over ADHD. Um, and is there anything else that you would like to go over? Because I don't
I
think you.
think that I just want to mention being in Florida and how being in solitude now
Yeah,
has allowed me to heal so much quicker
yeah.
from being in that relationship. Like,
Yeah, I think we should end on that because
okay,
because
awesome.
people are going to want to, like, you've had this incredible life story. People are going to want to know, like, where is she
You.
now? Like,
Yeah.
so and then I also just wanted to ask, was there any sort of like abuse on any level with your first husband?
He was very emotionally abusive as well. And there
Okay.
was a lot of control dynamics, a lot of yelling in that
Mhm.
relationship. But I was not in love with him. I felt
Yeah.
obligated to him by the church. And so I was trying to make it work because I felt like I needed to be a good Christian and eventually, like, my faith would pay off in the end. But once I was out of that environment from
Mhm.
Texas and back in Pennsylvania and then had connections to my mom in New Jersey, it made it a lot easier for me to see like this is not good, this is not healthy,
Mhm.
I'm not happy, and if this is what God wants for me, then maybe I
Mhm.
don't want any part of this because I'm
Right.
miserable. So it made it a lot easier for me to get out of that relationship. And I started dating my second husband, within like 6 months of ending my first marriage. And I
Wow.
didn't I didn't feel like I needed time to heal because I didn't realize, how much there was for me to heal from. To
Mhm.
me, I didn't have a broken heart, like I
Right.
wasn't there was no part of the relationship that I hadn't reconciled, like I knew what it was and I wasn't sad that it ended, you
Right.
know.
Say everything you just said again, but I think just introducing that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
So I was able to get away from my first marriage and the church in that time period. And
Mhm.
actually, it was my mom that helped me get out of that relationship.
Mhm.
My mom knew how miserable I was.
Mhm.
She used to tell me, one day you're just going to be done. And when you're done, I'm here for you and I will come get you. And sure enough, that's exactly what she did.
I love that so much. And also, did you think that she had a hand in like convincing you also to get out of the church?
She never said too much about the church because she knew how I felt about it at the time, except for when she came to visit the school one time and I was in a
Mhm.
play. And the play was basically us going to boot camp to prepare for spiritual battle. And then the end of the play is like us being called out to war. And in my little naive head, I'm thinking, like, oh, my mom's going to come see this play. She's going to get saved. She's going to love Jesus. And I remember seeing her at the end when we had people coming forward to pray. she had tears in her eyes and she walked out of the auditorium. And I'm thinking in my little naive head, like, oh, the Spirit of God is so heavy in here that, she can't even stand here. And when I finally got out and met up with her, my mom goes, "What the fuck was that, Sam? Is this some kind of cult? Like, what kind of war are they expecting you to go
Yeah.
and like fight?"
Right, because it's almost like a cult. Like it's, and then
Very much,
it's like when you're in a group mentality, because I've actually like experienced religious
very
cults
much.
like this, and it's like you're in this like perfect little bubble, and then someone from the outside world comes and they're
It's
like,
like, what the
what
hell is
is
going
going on?
on? I
Um,
remember that too because as I've done more like deep dives into the school post being there, I've thought back on when my mom said that. I was like, son of a bitch, my mom's always right.
yeah, your mum sounds incredible,
My mom
and
is
I,
the best person I've ever known.
yeah,
And her attitude about life is what I desire to do with my
mhm,
life and run with it. I want to
yeah,
take, her outlook of looking for the good things and the
mhm,
positive and just run with it in my life. And
yeah.
that be my way of living her legacy.
Samantha, I just want to chat a little bit about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult,
Yes.
because I think that your perspective will really help others who might think like, "Oh, it's too late," you know,
Mhm.
to go to a therapist and do this or that.
Never, never. I mean, I had already been in therapy for a while. I'm one of those people that's never been afraid, since leaving the church. I was never afraid to like go to therapy. I knew that like
Mhm,
it would be helpful. Um, and I was diagnosed about 2.5 years after my mom passed away. And one of the things that kind of became an aha moment for me
mhm,
was as I started to be able to move forward with the grief from my mom and enjoy some things in life,
mhm,
um, I was noticing that while I could cope over time with the loss of my mom, who was like the best person in my life, it was literally the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I
mhm.
couldn't cope with the laundry not being done. I couldn't cope with keeping up with paying for things. I felt like I couldn't like adult the way the rest of my friends were. It was just hard for me to keep things cleaned up. And I would have panic attacks over these
Yeah.
things and feel so overwhelmed by it. And like eventually remember speaking to my doctor and saying, like, I feel like there's something else going on here that's not
Mhm.
me because right now I have literally worked through anxious feelings about everything. I've gone through so many traumas and I've managed to keep moving forward despite all of the traumas. But the laundry freaks me out and being overwhelmed
Yeah.
with tasks will put me into the shame spiral and I cry.
Right. And
You know,
and we were talking, sorry to interrupt you. You just made me think of what we were talking about offline about ADHD being like different for women
yes,
because this type of stuff like not like worrying about having to do the laundry and building up like to do it is like called inattention, I believe.
hmm,
It's like you struggle to start tasks, and
yep,
women also like mask this. So men are, and young boys are usually diagnosed with ADHD, but it's a lot different for women. Like you're literally going into this shame spiral, calling yourself lazy or
and
whatever.
it's all the hyperactivities going on in your head. So
Yeah.
I had a friend that was diagnosed with ADHD and who recommended to me, maybe
Mhm.
seeing my doctor about it because she's like, a lot of what you're explaining to me sounds like what I've experienced.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to my doctor about it, and my doctor's like, Sam, I actually think that you do have ADHD. And she's like, I can basically, she's like, based on your symptoms and the fact that we've tried so many different SSRIs and none of them have been effective, I
Right.
think we can try an ADHD medication, but then you'll need to get an official evaluation if you need anything for disability. But for now, to try and treat your symptoms,
Yeah.
let's just start you on like a low dose of something of a stimulant and see if it helps. And if it does
Yeah.
help, then that's, we know we're on the right track. And if it doesn't help, then we know that we're not on the right track.
Right.
And I remember the first day I took the medication, I was honestly scared because I had never taken anything like that before, not
Mhm.
recreationally,
Yeah.
like nothing, not in like, I was in Bible college, so not in college, not in high
Yeah.
school. And especially because I was such an anxious person that I assumed anything that was a stimulant would get me so anxious that I'd end up
Yeah.
like, in an
Yeah.
emergency room. But when I took that medication for the first time, I remember I was just like sitting at my desk doing my work and just
Mhm.
suddenly realizing that my mind was quiet. And my mind had never been quiet before in my life.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's always multiple
I
thoughts
know.
going
Yeah.
on in my head at one time, and probably a song playing in the background too.
Backstreet Boys.
Yes. And so it was so strange. I was like, I've never experienced this before. And I started to just realize that I was completing what I was doing and then
Mhm.
going to the next task and completing that and going to the next task. Like, I wasn't hyper. I wasn't like, you know, hyper focused on anything. I was just clear minded for the first time in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and crying for a little bit because I was like, is this how normal people feel all the time? That they know how to quiet their mind, that they can
Mhm.
think one thought at a time? Like, has it been?
Right. And because also you said you struggled in school. So like
Mhm,
that is like a huge thing for ADHD. If you really struggled in school to focus, like
mhm,
it would make sense being diagnosed as an adult. Like why were all these other kids like getting good grades and able to
mhm.
focus, but you could barely like push yourself to do one
And it's
assignment?
because you come up with little hacks for yourself
Yeah.
that work. You learn through that. Like I learned, I don't have very good memory. So
Yeah.
for me, I could cram literally right before a test, like
Mhm.
that morning. And that would be
Yeah.
enough information would stay in my head so that I could
Yeah.
keep like a B
Right.
average throughout, like, a BC average throughout like my high school career and
Yeah.
whatnot because I just learned how to do like little hacks for my own
Yeah.
brain, not realizing that's what I was doing.
Well,
But
it's like it's called masking for
yeah,
women. Like, so it's like actually not normal to be like over organized with
hmm
everything and come up with these coping mechanisms. So, but we
hmm
think it is and we hide it. So,
yep.
I think that is just really helpful for anyone listening that is wondering,
Yeah,
like,
and
why?
honestly, I did end up getting like a full evaluation that
Mhm.
like showed that I have auditory processing issues
Oh,
where they're delayed.
wow.
So, and the same thing with like my visual processing that it's slower than usual. So I'm like slower
Interesting.
to like respond when they do those tests. So for like anybody that has a suspicion that they might have ADHD that's like not diagnosed, I highly recommend like seeing
Yeah.
if you can find somebody. Most insurances will cover like adult like testing for ADHD
Yeah.
nowadays because it's becoming more common, especially for women to get
Yeah.
diagnosed in adulthood. But
They're called like the lost women, like the lost
yeah,
generation of women that
and
literally our generation like didn't get diagnosed.
that clarity of mind too
Mhm.
with the medication is what helped me get out of that relationship because
Wow.
being able to think one thought at a
Mhm.
time, I was not as easily confused
Yeah.
and I was able to start seeing the patterns in the
Yeah.
relationship of the love
Yeah.
bombing and then the blow ups and realizing how much I was excusing in his behavior.
Wow. That's
It
how big of
really
a
opened my
part
eyes. Yeah, it was a
it
huge
played in
part.
your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a huge, huge part of me recognizing being able needing to get out of that relationship because I could then think clearly. And because I could think clearly, I could very clearly begin to see what was going on in my relationship.
That is crazy. I didn't even think of it from that perspective. I
Hmm
just know that like a lot of neurodivergent people who have like you said auditory processing disorder and ADHD, it actually is like quite common to be linked to PTSD and past abuse on many
hmm
levels because it affects our brain,
Yeah.
right? Abuse affects our brain. So like It's very interesting, and I agree. And we'll put all of this information in the description if anyone would like to go get tested, as well as like Samantha will obviously give resources to some of the things that you've talked about, like the battered women shelter.
Yeah,
In
and
Singapore.
even like for mental health, like the National Alliance on Mental
Mhm.
Illness is a great organization that
Yeah,
they offer like free mental health services and stuff in their
yeah.
local areas.
Hmm.
So there's so many ways to get help for, whatever it is that's going on in your life that you need to get a little assistance for. You just have to sometimes know where to look for it.
I love that. Um, Samantha, I have a question for you
Mhm.
that I'd love to ask all of our guests, because this podcast is obviously about survivors' personal stories and also educating just about mental health.
Mhm.
So, for our audience who might be listening and struggling silently, and they're coming across this video and looking for some sort of clarification or inspiration with their internal struggle, what advice would you give to younger Samantha, as young as 13, if you could speak to her just for a little bit, to turn around like a bad day? Like, what type of advice would you give to her to just
Hmm.
get through and survive that day?
I would tell young Sam, in order to get through a difficult day, to think about doing something that she loves, that makes her feel happy, and that makes her feel most like herself. And most likely, young Sam would pick listening to or seeing the Backstreet Boys or something Backstreet Boys related.
Yeah.
But for me, finding joy in whatever you're able to find joy in
Hmm.
has been key, regardless of how like silly it might be to the
Yeah.
rest of the world. If that's what you connect with and that is what lights you up and that's what brings you joy, then that's what you should do, especially on the hard days.
Yeah.
Is give yourself something that can put you in that fun, nostalgic type feeling. Ask yourself, what can I do today that is going to make me just a little bit happier? It doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be anything big. Like sometimes I'll put YouTube on and I will watch a Backstreet Boys music video and that'll lift my spirits for a minute. It's not the same excitement as going to a concert, but it's little things. And if you can find something that you can do for yourself that will bring you joy, I think it will make it easier to get through the difficult things because you will not feel as hopeless and you'll understand that while there's some bad things that do happen in life and we don't always get to control a lot of the bad things,
Mm.
we can control the good things. We can choose which good things we add to our lives. We can choose which things that light us up are included in our lives and how often they're included in our lives. So we do have a lot of control over the good. And so I would just say, like, think about the things that make you the happiest and that bring you the most joy and do those things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I always say this, but I've just learned so much and I continue to learn so much from my guests. And what you just said about, putting something on that just gives you a little bit of happiness. It just hit me that we focus so much on our growing into adults and
Mm-hmm.
our older self, but we rarely look back at our inner children
Mm-hmm.
and what we can do to please them, because internally we have a parent voice and an
Mm-hmm.
inner child
Child
voice.
voice.
So why are we ignoring the inner child voice if they want to go to a Backstreet Boys concert?
Go to a
Go
Backstreet
to a
Boys
Backstreet
concert,
Boys
like if
concert.
you want to play with Legos, play
Yeah,
with Legos, like if you want to go
yeah,
and build a sandcastle, go build a
yeah.
sandcastle. And so when we're able to tap into that and then do something for that inner child, I feel like we're really doing something to heal our whole selves.
Absolutely. And our inner child just wants to feel safe and loved as well.
Exactly.
So by doing that, like I'm sure mentally there's some scientific fact that like you are helping yourself subconsciously
Hmm.
in some way. Samantha, we have talked about some very heavy issues today that you've survived, like sexual assault, narcissistic and emotional abuse, religious trauma, and grief. I'm sure our listeners would love to know where you're at today in your life, having survived all of that. Are you able to talk about that?
Yes. So honestly, today I feel like I'm living my best life. I got out of my relationship and I decided that I was going to pick up my entire life and move from New Jersey to Jacksonville, Florida. My best friend that I go to all the concerts and like conventions with lives here, and her and I, we would always joke about how she should move to New Jersey or I should move to Florida. So when I saw housing prices in New Jersey and realized that wasn't something I could do on my own, I on a whim looked up to see what it would be like in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was super, super affordable. So I've been here for a little over 4 months now. And honestly, as soon as I got here, I mean, even as soon as I got into my car, it was hard to drive away from the house and drive away from
Hmm.
my old life. But I started at 9:30 p.m. and I drove straight through the night and just stopped for gas and got to Jacksonville by like 1 p.m. the next day. And as soon as I got into my apartment, even though it was empty and I was waiting for the movers, I felt so much peace.
Hmm.
And for a couple of weeks, it felt weird. Like I didn't know what to do with the quiet. I didn't know what to do when I wasn't on alert all the time for like how
Hmm.
footsteps in the hallway sounded or like, whether someone was in a bad mood or not. And now I get to do whatever I want to do for myself. So I have created a routine for myself that has allowed me to thrive. And there's nobody here to tell me what time I should go to bed, what time I should wake
Hmm.
up. That it's weird that I eat the same things every day, but I eat the same things every day. Like breakfast, lunch, and dinner are always the same for me because I found something I like. It works for
Yeah.
me. That's how my ADHD brain works. So
Hmm.
I set up little systems for myself. I'm living my best life at Backstreet Boys concerts. I just went to Vegas and saw them there. If you look behind me, all those pictures are like my meet and greets between the Backstreet Boys and like going to 90s conventions and really giving my inner child the things she
Yeah.
loves. And I spend so much time in solitude,
Hmm.
really learning just about myself. And it's like I'm becoming my own best friend where I'll
Yeah.
sit and I'll read new books that'll teach me something about myself and I'll journal and reflect on those things.
Mhm.
I'll go down to the pool and I'll meditate. And I'm genuinely the happiest and most
Mhm.
at peace that I've been in my entire life. And I've been putting myself out there for new opportunities, both to share my story and also for game shows on TV that I've got a couple of auditions that are in the works right now. So maybe I
So
might get myself
cool.
cast on a show. I got to do Happy Gilmore 2 while I was still
What?
in New Jersey. So I'm in a scene with Adam Sandler and Bad Bunny in that movie, and that's another thing that was on like my childhood bucket list was I wanted to be able to be in a movie. So I've
Yes.
been able to do that, and now I'm pursuing just anything that brings me joy. When I'm able to find things that I'm like, ooh, I really enjoy this. I love doing this. I want more of it. It's part of the reason I enjoy sharing my story is I just feel like there is power behind sharing our experiences and not staying quiet.
Yeah.
And it's also healing for me. And it's something that lights me up. So I'm like, yeah, I want to share my story. I want to do more of that. And anytime I can find any little thing that brings me joy in my life, I do. But right now, my life in Florida is perfect. I can't even describe the level of peace that I have. And for someone that used to be terrified of being alone and be terrified of ending up alone, so much so that I married someone the first time that I knew I wasn't in love with and was, probably going to be a disaster, but I was so afraid of being alone. And I
Yeah.
struggled to leave my second marriage because I didn't know what I would do on my own. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I
Honestly,
love
like it just goes to show like you really glow different when you're on the right path. Like
it. Yes,
I get that from you. Like obviously I'm meeting you for the first time today, but I just feel like you have such a lightness and you're like radiating love kind of, you know? And I'm sure you already know that your mum would be so proud of you. Like
I think so.
and you're
I
so
think she's with me.
resilient.
I really do. I think that she's with me. I think, especially when I drove down here from New Jersey on my own, because someone asked me, like, weren't you a little nervous driving like down the whole country by yourself through the night? I was like, yeah, maybe I should have been, but I don't know. I felt like my mom was with me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, honestly, you're just so resilient. And I think your personal story just really speaks volumes for listeners that might be going through some sort of abuse or feeling stuck in a situation like, I can't get out of this. So thank you so much for sharing, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. I really
And
appreciate it.
of course. And are you able to share where our guests can find you? I know you've just become a certified life coach. So
Mhm.
I would love for you to give your website or social
Right
media.
now, I'm just on my social medias, on my TikTok and my Instagram. They're both Sammy Rose 1010, so SAMMIE Rose 1010. And on YouTube, it's Sammy underscore Rose. And honestly, anybody could reach out to me, DM me, send me a message if they're listening to this and they connect with someone. I love to talk to people. So if there's something that somebody connects with and they say, feel like they need someone to reach out to and to talk to them, like, feel free to DM me and let me know, hey, I was listening and I connected with this. Do you mind if I talk to you? And I promise you, I'm never going to say no.
Amazing. I believe that. I feel like you're very approachable and easy to talk to. So,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you so much, Sammy. And we will put everything in our description, all of the websites and resources that you
Awesome.
have mentioned. But thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.